Comparing these 4-channel amplifiers from the 90s and modern day, you can see how much bigger old school amps were. Back in 1996, Soundstream offered their pure Class A amplifiers, several models including the Class A 10.0, 5.0, and Picasso. Now, if you want to see the 5.0, check out Mead916. I'll link to his video in the description below where he talked about this amp. He tested the amp, showed its features, found out if it really did the 500 watts that it promised. That was a fun video. Also, I have shown off the 10.0 before, and I'll link to that below, shown the 10.0 and the 10.2. I'll link both of those below, but yeah, this amp actually did over 1,000 watts, and here I'll show the test certified to 1%. It's rated 1,000 watts at 1.0 mono, and check this out. We got 1,155 watts, so definitely did its rated power. Beautiful circuit board, as always, for these Soundstream amps during this time frame. So yeah, just check all those videos out if you haven't seen them before. Now, Soundstream was great about tooting their own horn back in the 90s, saying, the Picasso, the most musical amplifier ever created for the 12-volt environment. Okay? So a lot of us wonder why they call these amplifiers Class A. If you know anything about Class A, you know that they require full power, full current at idle. These amplifiers don't pull anywhere near that. So I asked Wade Stewart a few years ago, RIP Wade Stewart. You can read this if you want to see exactly what he said. Basically, he said these amps were designed for Class A operation at very low power. Then they switch over to Class AB mode. So not really true Class A amplifiers. To my knowledge, Soundstream was the first back in the mid-80s. Nelson Pass designed the Class A40, which I believe was the first amplifier stated to be Class A for car audio, even though it wasn't, again, truly Class A. Here is the Picasso reference series that we have today. We're going to show this one off, and a beautiful heatsink, polished aluminum heatsink. It is not chrome, it's polished aluminum. If we go back to 1996, Car Audio and Electronics Directory, you guys know how I like to look at these. $699 back then in 1996. That's equivalent to around $1,400 in 2025. Now, unlike the other pure Class A amps, the Picasso is not rated for low ohms like quarter ohm, half ohm like the other ones, the 5.0 and 10.0 were rated, but it does have this classic design with the polished heatsink, insert terminals, Tiffany style RCAs, just very classic, some of my favorite amps ever designed. Here on the front you can see the 30 amp fuse, 12 volt ground and remote. 12 volt and ground there are 4 gauge accepting. Protect LED there is at the top. We also have the power LED, which is right above your connections for your 12 volt and ground. You can see the left speaker, right speaker there for one channel, level control left and right, a balance connection, also your input for left and right there for channels 1 and 2. We have overload for input there at the top, input level switch. We also have balanced and unbalanced if you want to use your balanced connection for each channel. So a lot of different settings there on the top. And on the right side, it's pretty much just the same as the left, just a whole different channel. Now in 1996, 1997, this was the reference series rated at 25 by 4 at 4 ohms, 50 by 4 at 2 ohms, or 100 watts by 2 bridged at 4 ohms. Dimensions 18 inches by 9.8 by 2.2 inches. Now that's pretty big for a 25 watt by 4 amplifier, right? Well, here you can see the Class A 10.0 and the Picasso kind of lined up against each other and see how much bigger. Picasso is actually bigger than the 10.0. We know the 10.0 is a 1,000 watt 2-channel amplifier. So back in 97 and 98, they changed these to Rubicon series. Again, this is the reference series I'm showing today, but the Rubicon series came afterwards. I really like the reference better because they polished the bottom and just look better to me. Here on the bottom of the amp, you can see there's 2 of these plugs. There's some switches and settings allowing you to set the amplifier in stereo, mono, or allowing you to use 2-channel or 4-channel inputs. All the good stuff we like to be able to do. Now, this amp doesn't have any built-in crossovers. During this time, it was more sound quality. It still is today to have external crossovers, not have them built into your amp. Speaking of built into the amp, how much power is built into this amp? We shall find out, my friends. On the left, you'll see the power output in watts. In the middle, the ohm load, and right, the voltage of the dyno will also have the remote clamp so that we can estimate this amplifier's efficiency, which we already know is going to be low, but we still want to see what it is. First up, we'll do the 4-channel test. That's right. 2 of the 4 channels are hooked up to the dyno. The other 2 are hooked up to resistors. Rated 25 watts by 4 at 12 volts. So let's try it. Certified to 1% distortion with 1 kilohertz. We easily get 25. We get more like 50 watts times 4 at 12.3 volts. Now let's bump up that voltage and try it again, because this amp does have an unregulated power supply. There you can see about 64 watts times 4, 13.85. Now let's try it uncertified up to the clipping point. 4 ohms, 4 channels. What can we get? Not a whole lot different than the certified test. A little over 50 watts per channel times 4. Dynamic sends a pulse tone into the amp. Again, we're using a 1 kilohertz track. And not a whole lot of excitement here, friends. As we've seen with other Soundstream amps, these don't do much difference between the 3 different modes. Well, let's hook it up to some speakers and see how it sounds. Sounds good to my ears, but we'll have more coming up. Let's try 2 ohms in the 4-channel mode rated 50 watts by 4. Certified test 1% distortion is where this stops. 1 kilohertz is the track, and yes, 79 watts times 4 at 12.67. Now let's bump up that voltage again and see what we get when we provide it more input voltage. Close to 14 volts. Yes, almost 100 watts times 4. About 96 watts times 4 average there. Now let's reset the dyno here for the uncertified test again up to the clipping point. And let's see what we get here. And there you go. Not much difference. We got about 82 watts or so times 4, 12.6 volts. Reset the dyno here for the dynamic track, which sends a pulse tone into the amp. And excitement is building, but we know it's about the same. But since you're ready for some excitement, let's get some more music so we can tickle your ears with SQ. Now we'll try this amp in the 2-channel test. That's right, we'll bridge each of the 4 channels down to 2. We'll switch it over here to the left, channels 1 and 2 to the bridge mode, and we'll switch also for channels 3 and 4 over to the left. We have just the single input there. It's allowed on the bottom, which routes RCAs from channels 1 and 2 over to 3 and 4. Have it wired up, as you can see here. Very beautiful. Again, I love the way these amps look when they're wired up. 4 ohms bridge is rated 100 watts by 2 at 12 volts. Let's find out what we get. Certified 1% distortion. You know we're going to get well more than 100 watts. And yes, about 180 watts times 2 at 12.7 volts. So easily does its rated power. And let's bump up that voltage some. See what we get with higher voltage. And yes, check that out. 225 watts times 2, 13.97. This amp is so big though, 18 inches long, you would expect it to do this much power, but I guarantee you that with all the heatsink, this amp could run at full power all day. Uncertified up to clipping, about 184 watts times 2 bridged. Again, 1 kilohertz is the track we're using. Let's try dynamic, sending a pulse track into the amp. Again, this amp doesn't have a lot of reserve capacitance, so we don't expect huge dynamic numbers, and we don't get them. 173 watts times 2. Let's go back to the SQ, let you hear some more sounds. I know some people are like, why do you have to play that kind of music? Well, if you listen to an amp like this, you have to stick your pinky up in there and listen to the fancy music. Here are the results of the 4-channel Picasso. We did run it at 8 ohms as well. Got about 30 watts per channel. Efficiencies are shown there on the right, which is actually a little bit better than I thought it would do. Bridged also, we did every test at 1 kilohertz. Got around 12.5 volts. We did run the 14.4 volt test, also certified. You can see all the results there. Overall, I was impressed. This amp did a lot more than it was rated. Of course, at its size, we would expect it. But let's take off this bottom panel here. Take a closer look at the internals. You know how we love these Soundstream amps. They just spend a lot of time with the aesthetics. I have to have my gloves on because I don't want to leave any more fingerprints, even though I got some over there on the left. The reflection for the win. Here are the internals. Again, the 4-channel amp. You can see on the right there, the 2 sides. In the middle, we have the 2 different output sections. On the left, we have the power supply section. And there you have it. This one has polypropylene capacitors for the rails and has normal electrolytics for the power supply section. It does have a sticker here in the middle. I'm not really sure what that was all about. Here's Picasso. This is a Rev Ace. This is an early version. 16 volt, 2200 microfarad capacitors here on the power supply section. Those probably need to be, or definitely need to be changed, I'm sure. It would not affect the results here in power that you guys see, but for reliability, you definitely want to do that. And here are those poly caps, 4.7K 100 volt for the rails. And the transistors are squished between the board and the heatsink as usual for these type of amplifiers from Soundstream back in the day. And of course the OP275 op amps, which Soundstream really liked back in the day. So these are so great, and I mean at the time they were pretty good. There you have my test and review of the Soundstream reference Picasso. If you'd like to see me make another video where I polish this amplifier and make it look really good, let me know in the comment section below. Thanks as always for watching. Until next time, this is Big D. I'm out of here.